The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a sound like thunder. Jake Morrison walked through them, his heart beating fast. Behind him came Dr. Lisa Carter, carrying a briefcase full of Earth's scientific data. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building Jake had ever seen on Earth. Aliens filled the room. Tall Krillian warriors stood like living mountains, their blue skin covered in battle scars. Their eyes glowed red as they watched the humans enter. Near them sat the Vexari, beings made of living crystal that sparkled in the light. They looked like walking diamonds, beautiful but cold. In the air above floated the Nethans, creatures made of gas and energy who spoke in musical tones. Jake felt very small. He was just a regular human from Texas, not even 6 feet tall. His brown hair was starting to turn gray, and his simple black suit looked plain next to the amazing alien forms around him. Lisa walked beside him, her blonde hair tied back in a neat ponytail. She tried to look confident, but Jake could see her hands shaking slightly. "So these are the humans," said Council Leader Zixathera. She was a Krillian, taller than any human, with 4 arms and skin like blue metal. Her voice was deep and rumbling. "They want to join our great council." Laughter filled the chamber. It came from every direction. The Krillians made sounds like rocks falling. The Vexari chimed like broken bells. The Nethans whistled and hummed. Jake felt his face turn red, but he kept walking forward. He reached the center of the chamber and stopped. Above him, holographic displays showed Earth from space. It looked so small compared to the other worlds he could see on screens around the room. Some alien planets were 10 times bigger than Earth. Others were covered in cities that stretched across entire continents. "Honorable council members," Jake began, his voice echoing in the vast space. "I am Ambassador Jake Morrison, representing the planet Earth and all of humanity. We come before you today to ask for membership in the Galactic Council." More laughter erupted. A Krillian general named Thokmar stood up. He was enormous, even for his species. "Membership?" he roared. "Look at them! They are tiny, weak! Their whole planet has no real weapons, no strong armies. They barely left their own solar system. Their technology is thousands of years behind ours," added a Vexari scientist. Her crystal body flashed different colors as she spoke. "They still use chemical rockets. Chemical rockets. We mastered faster than light travel before their species even discovered fire." Jake tried to speak again. "We may not be the strongest or the most advanced, but humans have other qualities. We are creative. We adapt quickly. We never give up, even when things look impossible." "Adapt?" Another burst of laughter came from a Nethan floating near the ceiling. "You cannot even survive in space without thick metal suits. Most of us can. Live in the vacuum between stars. You are like children playing with toys." Lisa stepped forward. She was a scientist, not a diplomat, but she could not stay quiet anymore. "We have made great progress in a short time. Only 100 years ago, we could not fly at all. Now we have reached other planets. We have learned to cure diseases that killed millions. We have—" "Silence!" Zixthera's voice boomed through the chamber. "Did we give you permission to speak, little female? On Krillia, females know their place." Lisa's eyes flashed with anger, but Jake touched her arm gently. Getting angry would not help them now. The council leader continued. "Humans think they are special because they learned to make fire and build simple machines, but look around you. Every species here has conquered dozens of worlds. We have technologies that can destroy stars or create new planets. What do humans offer us? Nothing. We offer friendship," Jake said quietly. "We offer different ways of thinking. Sometimes the smallest voice can have the biggest ideas." This caused the loudest laughter yet. Some aliens were laughing so hard they had tears in their eyes. Others were making sounds that Jake guessed were their version of laughing. "Friendship," wheezed Thokmar. We do not need friends. We need allies who can fight. Can humans fight? Can they protect themselves? Can they protect others? Jake wanted to tell them about human soldiers, about the brave men and women who had fought for freedom throughout Earth's history. But he looked around at these massive, powerful beings and realized his words would sound like a joke. A Vexari elder spoke up. Her crystal body was older and more complex than the others. Perhaps we should not be completely cruel. Humans are amusing, like pets. They might provide entertainment. Yes, agreed Zixthera. We will give Earth a special status. Probationary observers. You may stay and watch how a real galactic civilization works. You can clean our ships and carry our supplies. Maybe in 1,000 years you will learn enough to be useful. Jake felt his heart sink. Probationary observers was just a fancy way of saying servants, but he knew they had no choice. We accept, he said. Good. The council leader clapped her 4 hands together. I am sure you will find the work educational. Report to station. Commander Vexdal tomorrow. He will give you your assignments. As the council session ended, Jake heard aliens making bets. They were betting on how long humans would last in space before they gave up and went back to Earth. Most bets were for less than 1 year. A few generous ones gave humanity 2 years. Jake and Lisa walked out of the chamber in silence. Only when they were back in their small ship did Lisa finally speak. They think we are nothing, she said. Less than nothing. Jake nodded. I know. But this is still a chance. We are here. We are in space with the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. We can learn. We can prove them wrong. How? Lisa asked. We are exactly what they said we are. Small. Weak. Our technology is primitive compared to theirs. Jake looked out the window at the stars. I do not know yet. But humans have always been underestimated. People said we could never fly. They said we could never reach the moon. They said we could never leave our solar system. But here we are. Lisa managed a small smile. Here we are. Neither of them knew that in the cargo hold of their ship, among the Earth specimens Lisa had brought, something ancient was beginning to wake up. Something that had been waiting for this moment for millions of years. 3 months had passed since the humiliating council meeting. Commander Ryan Brooks floated in the zero-gravity section of Kepler 7 mining station, checking the fusion reactor readings. The station was huge, built into an asteroid rich with rare metals. Hundreds of aliens worked here, but only 12 humans. Ryan was a former Navy officer from California. He had short black hair and steady brown eyes that missed nothing. Back on Earth, he had commanded submarines. Here in space, he was just another worker, doing jobs that aliens considered too dangerous or too boring. Brooks, the voice belonged to Overseer Krelth, a Krillian who ran the human work crews. Krelth was smaller than most Krillians, which meant he was only 8 feet tall instead of 10. His blue skin had fewer scars, marking him as someone who gave orders rather than fought battles. Ryan pushed off a wall and floated over to where Krelth waited. Yes, sir? Reactor 7 is acting up again. The Vexari engineers say it needs a full shutdown for repairs. That will cost us 3 days of production. Krelth's red eyes glowed brighter, a sign he was annoyed. But I think it just needs a human to crawl into the tight spaces and fix the loose connections. Ryan looked at the datapad Krelth handed him. The radiation readings were high. Not deadly, but dangerous if someone stayed too long. Sir, the safety protocols say, I do not care what your safety protocols say, Krelth roared. Humans are always worried about safety. You are afraid of everything. A little radiation will not hurt you. Krillians work in much worse conditions. Ryan wanted to explain that Krillian skin was much thicker and more resistant to radiation, but he had learned not to argue. How long do I have? Fix it in 4 hours or do not bother coming back. Ryan took his tools and headed for Reactor 7. As he walked through the station corridors, he passed other human workers. There was Jenny Walsh, a mechanic from Detroit who could fix anything with moving parts. She was working on an ore processor that had broken down. Two Vexari engineers stood nearby, talking about how primitive human repair methods were. In the biology lab, Dr. Amy Foster was cataloging specimens from different worlds. Amy was young, maybe 28, with red hair and green eyes. She had studied marine biology at Woods Hole before volunteering for the space program. Now she spent her days sorting through what aliens considered junk. "These samples are worthless," her supervisor, a Vexari named Crystal Song of Stars, told her. Crystal Song was beautiful, like all Vexari, but her voice was cold. "Just label them and put them in storage. Do not waste time studying them." Amy nodded and kept working. But when Crystal Song left, she pulled out a microscope and looked at some specimens from Earth's deep ocean trenches. These creatures had come from places so deep that no sunlight ever reached them. They lived around volcanic vents, in water, hot enough to boil a human alive. Under the microscope, the creatures looked dead. They had been frozen for the long journey to Kepler 7. But Amy noticed something strange. Their cells had structures she had never seen before. Complex arrangements that looked almost like tiny machines. She made careful notes and took pictures. Maybe these creatures were not worthless after all. Meanwhile, Ryan was inside Reactor 7, sweating in his radiation suit. The space was barely big enough for a human. A Krillian would never fit. Even a Vexari's crystal body would be too rigid to bend through the narrow maintenance shafts. He found the problem quickly. Several power couplings had worked loose due to vibration. It was simple mechanical failure, the kind of thing that happened when maintenance was delayed too long. Ryan began tightening connections and replacing worn parts. While he worked, he heard voices outside the reactor. Krelth was talking to someone. "The humans are useful for this kind of work," Krelth was saying. "They are small enough to fit in, spaces our people cannot reach. And if the radiation kills them, well, they reproduce quickly." "But they are so slow," replied another voice. Ryan recognized it as belonging to Supervisor Hexton, a Nethin who oversaw mining operations. "And they ask too many questions about safety." "True, but they are cheap. Earth sends as many as we want. Their government is desperate to keep this contract." Ryan felt anger burning in his chest, but he kept working. Getting angry would not help. Proving them wrong would. He finished the repairs in 3 hours. When he powered the reactor back up, it ran better than it had in months. Ryan had not just fixed the loose connections, he had also adjusted the plasma flow and recalibrated the magnetic containment fields. The reactor was now running at 107% of its rated efficiency. When he reported, to Krelth, the Krillian was surprised. "It is working already?" "Yes, sir. And it is running better than before. I made some improvements while I was in there." Krelth checked his instruments. "This cannot be right. The efficiency readings are wrong." "No, sir. They are correct. I optimized the plasma dynamics, and humans do not optimize anything," Krelth snapped. "You probably broke something. I will have real engineers check your work." But when the Vexari engineers examined Reactor 7, they found that Ryan had indeed improved its performance. They were puzzled. According to their calculations, the improvements should not have worked. But they did. In the biology lab, Amy made an even more interesting discovery. When she exposed her deep-sea specimens to different types of energy, they showed signs of activity. Not life exactly, but some kind of response. It was as if they were machines waiting for the right signal to turn on. She tried different frequencies of electromagnetic radiation. Most did nothing. But when she tried a very specific frequency in the radio spectrum, something amazing happened. The dead specimens began to glow. Amy stared at her readings in disbelief. The creatures were not just glowing, they were organizing themselves into complex patterns. Under the microscope, she could see their internal structures rearranging, forming networks that looked almost like computer circuits. She was so excited that she forgot Crystal Song's orders about not studying the specimens. She ran more tests, documenting everything. The creatures seemed to be responding to some kind of signal, but Amy could not figure out what it was. That night, Ryan and Amy met in the station's small human quarters. They shared a meal of processed protein bars and recycled water. The food was terrible, but it was their only break from work. "How was your day?" Amy asked. "The usual. Fixed a reactor, got yelled at, got told I probably broke something." Ryan took a bite of his protein bar and made a face. "You?" "I found something weird in my specimens. They are reacting to radio signals, but my supervisor says I am wasting time." Ryan nodded. "They think we are good for manual labor and nothing else. No matter what we do, it is never enough." "Maybe not," Amy said. "But I am going to keep studying those specimens. There is something important here. I can feel it." Neither of them knew that across the galaxy, other humans were making similar discoveries. On mining ships and research stations, in asteroid belts and orbital platforms, humans were finding things that aliens had overlooked. Small things, seemingly unimportant things. But as Ryan had learned from his Navy days, sometimes the smallest problems caused the biggest failures, and sometimes the smallest discoveries changed everything. In the depths of space, something ancient was stirring. Something that had been waiting for the right signal for millions of years, and that signal was finally coming from the most unlikely source of all. The humans that everyone laughed at were about to wake something up. Pete Jackson was not supposed to be working on the communications array. His job was cleaning the air filters in Section C of Kepler 7 station. But when he saw the sparking control panel, he could not just walk away. Pete had always been good with electronics. Back in Ohio, he had fixed everything from car radios to computer servers. The array was mounted on the outside of the station, a collection of dishes and antennas that kept Kepler 7 connected to the rest of the galaxy. Pete put on his spacesuit and went outside to check the connections. Space was beautiful, but dangerous. One small mistake could kill him. He found the problem quickly. A micrometeorite had hit one of the main cables, causing a short circuit. Pete had the right tools and spare parts. It should have been a simple fix. But when he connected the new cable, something unexpected happened. The array started picking up a signal it had never detected before. Pete heard it through his helmet radio. It was faint, like a whisper from very far away. The sound was strange, not like any alien language he had heard. It had a rhythm to it. Like music, but more complex. Like mathematics, set to melody. He recorded the signal and brought it back inside the station. In his small quarters, Pete played it back on his personal computer. The more he listened, the more fascinated he became. There were patterns in the sound, structures that repeated but with small variations each time. Pete had studied some linguistics in college before he became an electrician. This signal had all the signs of language, but it was unlike anything in the galactic databases. He tried running it through the station's translation programs, but they could not identify it at all. The next day, Pete brought the recording to his supervisor, a Nethan named Wind Through Crystals. Nethans were beings of gas and energy who communicated through musical tones. If anyone would understand a strange signal, it should be wind through crystals. "I found this while fixing the communications array," Pete explained. "It seems to be some kind of transmission." Wind Through Crystals listened to the recording. His gaseous form flickered different colors as he processed the sound. "This is nothing," he said finally. "Human equipment is primitive. It picks up static and interference that our systems filter out automatically. You are hearing the background noise of space. But sir, there are patterns in it. It sounds like language." "Impossible. If there was a real signal, Our equipment would have detected it long ago. Human hearing is not sensitive enough to distinguish real signals from random noise. Delete this recording and get back to work." Pete nodded and pretended to delete the file. But that night, he copied it to his personal storage device. Something told him this was important. Meanwhile, Dr. Lisa Carter was having her own strange experience. Lisa had been assigned to the xenobiology department on Kepler-7, where she was supposed to catalog specimens from different worlds. Most aliens considered this work beneath them, perfect for a human who was playing at science. Lisa's supervisor was a Vexari named Geometric Truth of Light. The Vexari were the most advanced scientists in the galaxy, masters of mathematics and physics. Geometric Truth had made it clear that he considered human science to be worthless. "Your species still believes in theories we proved wrong 10,000 years ago," he had told Lisa on her first day. "You may organize the specimens, but do not attempt any real analysis. That requires intelligence." But Lisa could not stop herself from being curious. She had a PhD in xenobiology from Stanford and had published dozens of papers on extremophile organisms. She might be considered primitive by galactic standards, but she was still a scientist. While organizing specimens, Lisa noticed something interesting. There were samples from Earth in the collection, including some deep-sea organisms that Dr. Amy Foster had sent from other stations. These specimens were supposed to be dead, preserved for study. But Lisa's instruments showed unusual activity in them. She ran a full-spectrum analysis and discovered that the organisms were responding to electromagnetic signals. Specifically, they were responding to the same frequency that Pete Jackson had, discovered in his mysterious transmission. Lisa was careful not to let Geometric Truth see what she was doing. She worked on her real research during breaks and after hours. What she found was incredible. The Earth specimens were not just responding to the signal. They were amplifying it and retransmitting it in a more complex form. It was as if the organisms were designed to be some kind of biological communications equipment. Lisa managed to get a message to Amy Foster on another station. She sent it through the Human Communication Network, an informal system that humans had set up to stay in touch across the galaxy. The aliens did not monitor these messages because they considered human chatter to be unimportant. Amy's response was excited. She had been studying the same organisms and had made similar discoveries. The specimens were definitely reacting to signals from space, but Amy had found something even more interesting. "The organisms are not from Earth," Amy's message said. "I have run genetic analysis on them. They share no DNA with any known Earth life. Somehow these alien organisms ended up in our deepest oceans, and they have been there for a very long time." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. If Amy was right, then these organisms had been placed in Earth's oceans deliberately. But by who? And why? She decided to share her findings with Pete Jackson. Pete was just a technician, but he had found the original signal. Maybe together they could figure out what was happening. Pete came to Lisa's lab late one night when the alien supervisors were asleep. Lisa showed him her data on the organisms, and Pete played his recording of the mysterious signal. "Watch this," Lisa said. She exposed a sample of the organisms to Pete's signal. Immediately, they began to glow and organize themselves into complex patterns. Pete stared in amazement. "They are responding to my signal." More than responding. They are transforming. "Look at these cellular structures. They are becoming more complex, more organized. It is like the signal is activating dormant systems." Pete studied the readouts on Lisa's instruments. He might not be a scientist, but he understood electronics. These patterns look like circuit diagrams, like the organisms are becoming some kind of biological computer. That is exactly what I think is happening. But the question is, who designed them? And what are they supposed to do? Before Pete could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed red, and announcements echoed through the corridors in multiple alien languages. Lisa and Pete ran to the nearest observation deck. Outside, they could see something that made them gasp in wonder and fear. Across the asteroid field, ancient structures were rising from the surface of rocks and planetoids. Structures that had been hidden for millions of years were now revealing themselves. The structures were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They looked like they were made of crystal and metal that flowed like water. They pulsed with the same rhythm as Pete's mysterious signal. "What are those things?" Pete whispered. Lisa checked her instruments. The organisms in her lab were glowing brighter than ever, responding to whatever was happening outside. "I think we just found out who put those organisms in Earth's oceans." Throughout the galaxy, the same thing was happening. On thousands of worlds, ancient structures were awakening, and the only beings who seemed to understand what was happening were the humans that everyone had laughed at. The signal Pete had found was not random static. It was a wake-up call that had been sent across the galaxy, and somehow humans had become the key to answering it. In the command center of Kepler-7, alien officers were panicking. Their most advanced sensors could not penetrate the structures or understand their purpose. The Galactic Council was demanding answers that no one could provide. But in a small lab in the human quarters, Dr. Lisa Carter and technician Pete Jackson were beginning to understand that they had stumbled onto the biggest discovery in galactic history, and they were probably the only ones who could figure out what it meant. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major species gathered in the Great Chamber, their voices raised in fear and confusion. Holographic displays showed the same terrifying sight from across the galaxy, ancient structures emerging from planets, moons, and asteroids. Council leader Zix Thara stood in the center of the chamber, her four arms gesturing at the images surrounding them. In the past 72 hours, over 10,000 of these structures have appeared. Our best scientists cannot scan them. Our most powerful weapons cannot damage them. What are they? General Thokmar, the massive Krillian warrior, slammed his fist on his podium. They must be weapons. Someone is preparing to attack the galaxy. We should strike first. With what? Demanded Crystal Song of Stars, speaking for the Vexari scientists. Our energy beams pass right through them. It is as if they exist in a different dimension. High above them, the Nethan collective spokesperson Wind Over Mountains played a series of worried musical notes. Our sensors detect massive energy buildups inside the structures, but the energy is unlike anything in our databases. It does not follow any known physical laws. Meanwhile, on Kepler-7 station, Dr. Amy Foster was making discoveries that would have shocked the Council if they had known about them. In her small laboratory, the specimens from Earth's oceans had undergone a complete transformation. What had once been simple organisms were now complex, almost crystalline structures that pulsed with their own light. Amy watched in amazement as they formed intricate networks, connecting to each other with threads of living energy. They are not just organisms anymore, she told Lisa Carter over their secure communication link. They have become something else, something more intelligent. Lisa was studying similar changes in her own specimens. The structures outside the station are responding to them. When the organisms pulse, the ancient structures pulse back. They are communicating. Pete Jackson had spent the last 3 days recording and analyzing the signals. His small quarters were filled with electronic equipment he had built or borrowed. The signals are getting stronger and more complex. It is definitely a language, but it is so advanced that our computers can barely process it. Amy leaned closer to her transformed specimens. As a marine biologist, she had always been good at observing animal behavior. These organisms were behaving like they were part of something larger, like individual cells in a vast brain. "I think I understand," she said suddenly. These organisms are not separate entities. They are all connected, all part of one massive intelligence. And that intelligence has been sleeping in our oceans for millions of years. The implications hit all three humans at the same time. If Amy was right, then Earth was not just the home of humanity. It was also the nursery for some ancient cosmic intelligence that had been waiting for the right moment to wake up. On the command deck of Kepler-7, Overseer Krelth was having the worst day of his military career. The Krillian officer stood before a wall of displays showing sensor readings that made no sense. His subordinates brought him report after report of system failures and unexplained phenomena. "Sir, the humans are requesting permission to study the anomalies," reported his aide, a young Krillian named Dextar. Krelth growled. "Humans? What could humans possibly contribute? Their equipment is primitive. Their knowledge is limited." "Yes, sir." But they seem to have some understanding of what is happening. The human called Jackson claims he detected the first signals 3 days before our systems registered anything. Impossible. Our sensors are 1,000 times more sensitive than anything humans have built. But even as Krelth spoke, he wondered. Human equipment was primitive, but it was also different. Maybe it could detect things that advanced alien technology missed. In the depths of space, more structures continued to emerge. They appeared not just on planets but in empty space, growing from what seemed like nothing. Each structure was unique, but they all shared the same flowing organic architecture that seemed to be part crystal, part metal, and part something else entirely. The structures were beautiful, but they were also clearly beyond the understanding of galactic civilization. Ships that flew too close experienced system failures. Crews reported strange dreams and visions. Some aliens claimed to hear voices speaking in languages they did not recognize but somehow understood. Dr. Amy Foster made another breakthrough when she decided to try direct communication with her transformed specimens. Using a simple microphone connected to her computer, she spoke to them. "Hello," she said, feeling a bit foolish. "Can you understand me?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then the organisms began to pulse in a complex rhythm. Amy's computer, running Pete's signal analysis software, translated the pattern into something resembling words. "We remember you." Amy's heart started beating faster. "Remember me? We have never met before. Not you, your kind guardians of the seeds." Seeds? What seeds? The organisms pulsed brighter. Images began forming in Amy's mind, not through her eyes but directly in her thoughts. She saw Earth as it was millions of years ago, a young planet with primitive oceans. She saw beings of light and energy visiting the planet and placing something in the deepest trenches. "You left these organisms on Earth," Amy said, understanding flooding through her. "You have been watching us through them." Watching, waiting, testing. Testing. Us for what? The images in Amy's mind changed. She saw the galaxy as it was millions of years ago, full of young species learning to use tools and build civilizations. She saw the same beings of light visiting world after world, leaving behind watchers and teachers. "You are the architects," Amy whispered. "You seeded life across the galaxy. We built, we taught, we departed. Why did you leave? Time to grow, time to learn, time to choose." Amy felt a chill of understanding. Choose what? But before the organisms could answer, her laboratory door burst open. Crystal Song of Stars floated in, his crystalline body flashing with angry colors. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "You were ordered to catalog specimens, not conduct unauthorized experiments." Amy quickly shut down her equipment. "I was just organizing the samples, sir." "Do not lie to me, human. I can see the energy readings from your experiments. You have been stimulating the specimens with electromagnetic radiation. This is dangerous and foolish." Crystal Song moved to Amy's workstation and began examining her equipment. "You have modified this scanner. You have built additional circuits. How did you do this?" Amy did not answer. She could not explain that Pete Jackson had helped her upgrade the equipment or that they had been working together to understand the signals. "You will cease all research immediately," Crystal Song ordered. "These specimens will be transferred to proper Vexari scientists for study. You humans are too primitive to handle such complex phenomena." As Crystal Song gathered Amy's specimens, Amy felt a sense of loss and urgency. The organisms had been trying to tell her something important, something about a choice that needed to be made. But even as Crystal Song took away her samples, Amy knew that it was too late to stop what was happening. Across the galaxy, the ancient structures continued to emerge. The signal continued to grow, stronger. And somewhere in the cosmic network of watchers and seeds, an intelligence older than galactic civilization was waking up. The humans had been chosen as guardians for a reason. Soon, everyone would find out what that reason was. The ancient structures had been silent for 6 days. Across the galaxy, they stood like monuments to a forgotten age, beautiful and mysterious, but offering no clues about their purpose. The greatest minds of galactic civilization had tried everything: mathematical equations, energy patterns, even music. Nothing worked. Then, on the 7th day, the structures began to project images. Dr. Ben Martinez was in his small office on the research station Harmony 9 when the first hologram appeared. Ben was a linguist from New Mexico who had been studying alien languages for the past 2 years. The aliens tolerated his work because they found human attempts at linguistics amusing, like watching a child try to solve complex mathematics. The hologram formed in the center of the station's main corridor. It showed a figure of pure light, tall and graceful, with features that seemed to shift and change like flowing water. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, echoing through every speaker on the station. But the words were in no language anyone recognized. Station Commander Vexdal, a Krillian military officer, immediately called for his best translators. The Vexari linguists arrived first, their crystal bodies flashing with excitement. They ran the alien speech through every translation protocol in their vast databases. Nothing. The Nethan language specialists tried next, using their musical understanding of communication to analyze the patterns of sound. They found rhythm and melody in the alien words, but no meaning they could decode. For hours, the greatest linguistic minds in the galaxy worked on the problem. The holographic figure spoke the same message over and over, patient but insistent. Every attempt at translation failed. Finally, in desperation, Commander Vexdal remembered the human linguist. "Get Martinez," he ordered. "Maybe his primitive brain will stumble onto something our experts missed." Ben was nervous as he entered the main corridor. The holographic figure was even more impressive up close, radiating a sense of ancient wisdom and power. Around him, alien scientists muttered about the foolishness of bringing in a human for such important work. Ben listened to the alien speech, recording it on his simple digital device. Unlike the aliens, he did not immediately try to run it through computer programs or mathematical analysis. Instead, he did what human linguists had always done. He listened for patterns, for the music of language, for the emotional content beneath the words. After an hour of careful listening, Ben began to understand something that the advanced alien linguists had missed. This was not just one language. It was a combination of many languages, woven together in a complex tapestry of meaning. "The speaker is using elements from multiple linguistic families," Ben announced. "But they are very old forms, probably the root languages that gave birth to modern galactic tongues." The Vexari chief linguist, Harmony of Mathematical Truth, flashed dismissive colors. "Impossible. We have traced all language evolution back 10,000 years. There are no unknown root languages." "Not unknown," Ben said quietly, forgotten. This speaker is using the original forms of your languages, from before they evolved into what you speak today. Ben worked through the night, breaking down the message piece by piece. He identified fragments of Proto-Krillian, ancient Vexari mathematical speech, and musical elements that predated modern Nethan communication. But there were other pieces too, linguistic structures that did not match any known galactic species. As dawn broke over Harmony 9, Ben finally managed to decode the message. Greetings, children of the galaxy. We are the architects, builders of worlds, and teachers of civilizations. The time of awakening has come. We seek audience with the Guardians. When Ben announced his translation, the reaction was immediate and intense. Commander Vexidal contacted the Galactic Council, and within hours, representatives from every major species had arrived at Harmony 9. Council leader Zixthara herself came, along with the most powerful military and scientific leaders in the galaxy. They gathered in the station's main corridor, watching as Ben demonstrated his ability to communicate with the holographic figure. "Ask them what they want," Zixthara commanded. Ben spoke carefully in the ancient language forms he had identified. The holographic figure responded, and Ben translated. "They say they have been sleeping for millions of years, watching through their guardians. They have awakened because it is time to choose the next shepherds of galactic civilization." "Shepherds?" General Thokmar's voice was a threatening growl. "We do not need shepherds. We govern ourselves." Ben relayed the question. The architect's response made him pale. "They say that current galactic civilization has become stagnant. Species have stopped growing, stopped adapting. They fight instead of learning. They conquer instead of creating. The galaxy needs new leadership." "This is outrageous," shouted Crystal Song of Stars. "The Vexari have guided galactic science for 10,000 years. We have brought order and progress to countless worlds." But when Ben translated this, the architect's response was cold. "They say the Vexari have brought mathematical perfection but lost the ability to imagine. The Krillians have brought strength but forgotten compassion. The Nethans have brought harmony but avoided all conflict, even necessary conflict." The alien leaders were outraged, but they could not argue with beings who had built the mysterious structures. The architects clearly possessed technology beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "What do they propose?" Zixthara asked, her voice carefully controlled. Ben listened to the architect's long response, his expression growing more amazed with each word. "They propose a test. Each species will send representatives to compete in trials that measure not strength or intelligence, but wisdom and adaptability. The winning species will inherit architect technology and become the new guardians of galactic peace." "When do these trials begin?" "Immediately. Each species has 1 day to choose their representatives." The alien leaders began arguing about who should represent their species. The Krillians wanted their greatest warriors. The Vexari demanded their most brilliant scientists. The Nethans insisted on their most harmonious consciousness dancers. But Ben was thinking about something else. During his communication with the architect, he had noticed something interesting. When he spoke about human language and culture, the holographic figure had seemed particularly attentive. Almost hopeful. "Commander Vexdal," Ben said during a break in the arguing, "will humans be allowed to participate in the trials?" Vexdal laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "Humans? Why would the architects want to test such a primitive species? You barely qualify as galactic citizens." But Ben had caught something in the architect's earlier words. When they spoke of guardians, they had used a term that could mean both watchers and those who tend the seeds. And Ben remembered Dr. Amy Foster's messages about the organisms from Earth's oceans. "I think we should ask," Ben said. "The architects might have their own reasons for including humans." Vexdal was about to refuse when Zixthara interrupted. "Let the human ask. If the architects reject them, it will prove how unimportant they are. If they accept them, it might tell us something about what these architects truly want. Ben posed, the question in the ancient language. The holographic figure's response surprised everyone. The youngest sometimes see what the oldest have forgotten. All species may send representatives. As the alien leaders left to choose their champions, Ben stayed behind to continue communicating with the architect. He had so many questions about these ancient beings and their long watch over the galaxy. But the most important question was one he did not dare ask aloud. Why did he get the feeling that humanity had been chosen for this moment long before they ever left Earth? The answer, he suspected, lay with the organisms that Dr. Amy Foster had been studying. The seeds that had been placed in Earth's oceans millions of years ago. The guardians that had been watching and waiting for humanity to grow strong enough for this test. Soon he would find out if his suspicions were correct. The transport ship that came for the human representatives was unlike anything they had ever seen. It seemed to be made of living crystal that flowed and shifted like water, but remained solid enough to walk on. Jake Morrison, the ambassador, who had endured the council's laughter months ago, led the human team aboard. With him came the others who had been chosen. Dr. Amy Foster, the marine biologist who understood the ancient organisms. Pete Jackson, the technician who had first detected the architect signal. Dr. Lisa Carter, the xenobiologist who had connected the specimens to the structures. And Dr. Ben Martinez, the linguist who could speak with the architects. "I still cannot believe we are here," Amy whispered as they walked through corridors. That seemed to respond to their presence, glowing softly where their feet touched the floor. Jake nodded grimly. "The council only agreed to let us participate because they think we will fail quickly and prove how superior they are." The other species had sent their most impressive representatives. The Krillians chose General Thokmar himself, along with 4 of their greatest warriors. The Vexari selected their most brilliant mathematical minds, beings whose crystal bodies contained millions of years of accumulated knowledge. The Nethans brought their most evolved consciousness, a collective entity that existed as pure thought and energy. When all the representatives arrived at the testing ground, they found themselves on what seemed to be a planet-sized structure floating in empty space. The surface was covered with geometric patterns that shifted and changed, creating a landscape that was both beautiful and impossible. The architect appeared to them not as a hologram this time, but as a being of pure energy, standing 50 feet tall. Its voice resonated through space itself. "Welcome, children of the galaxy. You have come to be tested for the right to guide galactic civilization into its next age. But understand this, we do not seek the strongest, the smartest, or the most advanced. We seek those with the wisdom to grow, the courage to change, and the compassion to serve others." General Thokmar stepped forward, his massive frame imposing even next to the other aliens. "We Krillians have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have brought order to chaos. What test could challenge those who have never known defeat?" The architect's response came not in words, but in action. The ground beneath them shifted, forming a series of chambers. "Each species will face trials designed to test your true nature. Strength alone will not save you. Intelligence alone will not guide you. Only wisdom and adaptability will see you through." The first trial began immediately. Each team was transported to a separate dimension, a pocket universe designed to test their specific weaknesses. The Krillians found themselves on a world where violence was impossible. Their weapons would not fire. Their strength meant nothing. They faced a civilization of beings who communicated only through art and poetry. To succeed, the mighty warriors had to learn gentleness and creativity. The Vexari were placed in a realm where mathematics and logic led to paradoxes and impossible results. Their perfect calculations failed them. They had to rely on intuition and emotion, concepts their species had abandoned long ago. The Nethans faced a world of constant conflict, where harmony was impossible and hard choices had to be made quickly. Their collective consciousness, used to endless contemplation, struggled with the need for decisive action. The humans found themselves in a place that seemed familiar yet strange. It was a world like Earth, but everything was slightly wrong. The gravity was too light, the air too thin, the sun too bright. Plants and animals that looked familiar behaved in unexpected ways. This is a test of adaptation, Lisa realized. They want to see how we handle an environment that is almost right but not quite. Jake looked around at his team. They were just 5 humans facing a trial designed by beings who had guided galactic evolution for millions of years. But they had something the other species lacked: experience with being underestimated. "We have been adapting our whole lives," Jake said. "Every day in space, we have had to figure out how to survive in places we were not meant to be. This is just another day." Amy studied the strange plants around them. "These look like Earth species, but they have been modified. Look at these leaves. They are designed to capture different wavelengths of light, and these root systems are much deeper than they should be." Pete examined the local rocks and soil. "The mineral content is wrong for Earth-type life, but someone has engineered these organisms to thrive here anyway." Ben listened to the sounds of the world around them. "There are patterns in the wind, in the animal calls. It is almost like the planet itself is trying to communicate." Lisa nodded. "This is not just a test of survival. It is a test of understanding. We need to figure out what this world is trying to teach us." They spent hours exploring, not trying to conquer or catalog the world, but trying to understand it. Amy discovered that the modified plants were actually more efficient than Earth plants, capable of surviving in conditions that would kill normal vegetation. Pete found that the strange mineral compositions created a natural network that carried information across vast distances. Ben realized that the animal sounds were indeed a form of communication, a planetary language that connected all life on the world. And Lisa understood that they were looking at a model of what Earth could become, a world where life had been guided to reach its full potential. "They are showing us the future," Jake said when the team reported their findings. "Not our future, but what could be possible with architect guidance." As if responding to his words, the landscape around them began to change. They saw the world as it had been, a barren planet with no life. Then they watched as the architects had seeded it, introducing organisms that could adapt and evolve and thrive. But then they saw something that shocked them. The architects showed them Earth as it really was. Not a natural world that had evolved on its own, but a carefully tended garden. Every major step in human evolution had been guided. Every crucial discovery had been quietly encouraged. "We have been part of the test all along," Amy whispered. "Humanity did not evolve naturally. We were designed." "Not designed," Ben corrected, understanding flowing through him as he listened to the planetary voice. Guided, encouraged. The potential was always there. The architects just helped it grow. The scene around them shifted again. Now they saw the other worlds of the galaxy, the homeworlds of the Krillians and Vexari and Nethans. All of them showed the same pattern: careful guidance in the early stages, then abandonment as the species became advanced enough to guide themselves. But we all failed the test, Lisa realized. The Krillians became too focused on strength. The Vexari became too obsessed with perfection. The Nethans became too afraid of conflict. "So why are humans different?" Pete asked. The answer came not from words, but from images. They saw humanity's history, the wars and conflicts, the struggles and failures, but also the art and music and literature. They saw humans helping each other in disasters, sacrificing for strangers, refusing to give up even when defeat seemed certain. "Because we never stopped being human," Jake said quietly. No matter how advanced we became, we kept our compassion. We kept our ability to change and grow. Around them, the other trials were ending. Through the planetary network, they could sense the other species struggling with challenges that tested their fundamental assumptions about existence. The Krillians were failing because they could not learn gentleness. The Vexari were failing because they could not accept imperfection. The Nethans were failing because they could not make hard choices. But the humans were not just surviving their trial, they were understanding it. They were learning from it. They were growing because of it. As the first phase of testing ended, Jake and his team found themselves back on the impossible planet with the other representatives. The aliens looked shaken and confused by their experiences, but the humans looked hopeful. The architect appeared again, its energy form pulsing with what might have been approval. The first trial is complete. You have all learned something about yourselves. Now begins the second phase, where you will face not your weaknesses, but your greatest strengths. Prepare yourselves, for the real test is about to begin. The second phase of trials took place in dimensions that bent the laws of physics. Each challenge was designed to test the representatives at their absolute limits, pushing them beyond anything they had ever experienced. The Krillians faced their trial first. General Thokmar and his warriors were transported to a realm where they had to protect a city of helpless civilians from an endless horde of shadow creatures. But there was a twist. The shadows could only be defeated through acts of mercy and kindness, not violence. Thokmar tried every battle strategy he knew. His warriors fought with the fury of their ancestors, but every act of aggression only made the shadows stronger. It was only when one young Krillian stopped fighting and helped a fallen civilian that a few shadows dissolved. "This is impossible," Thokmar roared. "Warriors are meant to fight, not coddle the weak." But as the trial continued, the Krillians slowly learned. Each act of protection instead of destruction, each moment of gentleness instead of force, pushed back the darkness. By the end, Thokmar himself was carrying wounded civilians to safety, his mighty strength used for preservation instead of conquest. The Vexari faced a different challenge. Their perfect mathematical minds were placed in a realm of pure chaos, where nothing followed logical rules. Equations that should have worked failed spectacularly. Mathematical constants changed randomly. Crystal Song of Stars and her team were forced to rely on intuition and guesswork. "This violates every principle of reality," Crystal Song declared, her crystalline body flashing with frustrated colors. "Mathematics is the foundation of existence. Without it, there is only madness." But gradually, the Vexari began to understand that chaos had its own patterns. Not mathematical patterns, but emotional ones. They learned to feel their way through problems instead of calculating solutions. By the trial's end, they were creating beautiful, impossible structures that defied logic but somehow worked perfectly. The Nethans were forced into a realm of constant crisis, where decisions had to be made instantly without time for contemplation. Their collective consciousness, used to discussing every choice for days or weeks, struggled with the need for immediate action. Wind Over Mountains, speaking for the Nethan collective, played anxious musical notes. "We cannot decide so quickly. Hasty choices lead to disharmony. We need time to consider all possibilities." But the scenarios they faced gave them no time. Burning buildings, flooding cities, attacking enemies, everything required split-second decisions. Slowly, the Nethans learned to trust their instincts and act on incomplete information. They discovered that sometimes an imperfect choice made quickly was better than a perfect choice made too late. Then came the humans' turn. Jake Morrison and his team found themselves in what looked like a massive space station, but one that was falling apart. Systems were failing throughout the structure. Life support was down in multiple sections. There were survivors trapped in sealed compartments, and the whole station would explode in less than 6 hours. "This is impossible," Pete said, looking at the diagnostic readings. "The damage is too extensive. We would need 100 technicians and a week to fix all these problems. But we only have 5 people and 6 hours, Amy added, studying the station schematics. Lisa was already analyzing the life support systems. And some of these technologies are beyond anything we understand. How are we supposed to repair systems we have never seen before? Ben was listening to the emergency broadcasts echoing through the station. There are over 3,000 people trapped in here. Different species, different life support requirements. The Krillians need high pressure. The Vexari need specific electromagnetic frequencies. The Nethans need low gravity. Jake looked around at his team. They were facing a challenge that seemed designed to be impossible, but that was nothing new for humans. Okay, he said calmly. We cannot fix everything, and we cannot save everyone the way their own species would. But we can do what humans do best. We can improvise. They split up to tackle different problems. Pete went to the main power systems, not trying to repair the alien technology, but finding ways to reroute power through human-built bypasses. Amy headed to the bio-support systems, using her knowledge of Earth organisms to find biological solutions to technological problems. Lisa worked on environmental controls, creating hybrid life support systems that could keep multiple species alive, even if they were not perfect for any of them. Ben went to the communication systems, establishing contact with trapped survivors and coordinating rescue efforts. Jake took on the most dangerous job, going into the damaged sections to manually extract survivors. What happened next amazed even the watching architect. The humans did not just complete their assigned tasks. They transformed the entire approach to the problem. Pete discovered that the station's power grid was based on the same principles as Earth's electrical systems, just scaled up enormously. He started teaching alien survivors how to help with repairs, turning desperate civilians into impromptu technicians. Amy found that several Earth bacteria, carried in the humans' own bodies, could break down the toxic gases that were poisoning the station's atmosphere. She started cultivating them in the biolabs, creating a living air purification system. Lisa realized that instead of trying to create perfect environments for each species, she could create compromise environments where everyone could survive. It was not ideal for anyone, but it worked for everyone. Ben did something that shocked the alien survivors. He started teaching them to work together. Krillians and Vexari, who had been enemies for centuries, found themselves cooperating to save Nethan civilians. Species that had never spoken to each other were sharing resources and expertise. Jake moved through the damaged sections like a force of nature, not just rescuing survivors, but inspiring them to rescue each other. A Krillian warrior found himself, gently carrying an injured Vexari child. A Nethan collective used their energy forms to shield others from radiation. As the hours passed, something incredible happened. The station began to stabilize, not because the humans had fixed everything, but because they had turned a crisis into a community effort. Thousands of beings who had been helpless victims became active participants in their own salvation. With 1 hour left before the station would explode, Jake's team achieved the impossible. They had not just saved everyone aboard. They had created a functioning multi-species society in miniature. The architect appeared as the trial ended, its energy form brighter than they had ever seen it. Remarkable, it said. The other species succeeded by overcoming their weaknesses, but you succeeded by transforming your challenges into opportunities. You did not just solve the problem, you showed everyone else how to solve it together. Around them, the representatives of other species stared in amazement. They had completed their trials through great effort and personal growth. But the humans had completed theirs by lifting up everyone around them. General Thokmar approached Jake, his massive form somehow less intimidating than before. How did you know to teach the others? Jake shrugged. We did not know. We just did. What felt right. On Earth, we learned that when everyone works together, impossible things become possible. Crystal Song of Stars floated closer, her crystalline body pulsing with new colors. Your solutions were not mathematically optimal, yet they worked better than our perfect calculations. Amy smiled. Sometimes good enough for everyone is better than perfect for someone. But even as the trials ended, Jake could sense that something even greater was coming. The architect's energy was building toward something, and the air itself seemed to hum with anticipation. "The trials are complete," the architect announced. "You have all grown. You have all learned. But now comes the final test. You must face the strongest, the being who embodies the peak of what evolution can achieve within normal space-time. Only one species will be chosen to inherit our legacy." As the words echoed through the dimension, Jake felt a chill. They had made it this far against all odds. But what could humans possibly offer to a being that represented the ultimate in cosmic evolution? Soon he would find out. The final trial took place in a dimension that existed between dimensions, a space where reality itself was fluid and malleable. The representatives from each species stood on a platform of crystallized starlight, surrounded by the swirling energies of creation itself. Before them materialized the strongest. It was a being of pure energy and will, constantly shifting between forms that represented the peak evolution of every known species. Sometimes it appeared as a Krillian of impossible size and power, sometimes as a Vexari whose crystal body contained the mathematical secrets of the universe, sometimes as a Nethan collective so vast it encompassed entire star systems. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of supernovas and the whisper of quantum particles. "I am the strongest. I am what you could become if you pushed evolution to its absolute limit. I am power without restraint, knowledge without question, harmony without discord. I am perfection." General Thokmar stepped forward first, his warriors' instincts demanding he face this challenge head-on. "I challenge you to combat, being of energy. Let us see whose strength is greater." The strongest regarded him for a moment, then gestured casually. Thokmar was instantly frozen in place, not by any visible force but by the sheer weight of the being's presence. "Your strength is impressive for your species, warrior, but I could crush 1,000 Krillian armies with a thought. Combat is meaningless. Here." Crystal Song of Stars floated forward next. "Then let us match minds. I challenge you to a contest of pure mathematics and logic." The strongest form shifted to become a Vexari of impossible complexity. "I contain the mathematical principles that govern reality itself. I know equations that could reshape matter at the quantum level. Your most brilliant insights are children's drawings compared to my understanding." Wind over mountains played a series of harmonious notes. "Perhaps we could share consciousness, merge our awareness in perfect unity. I have absorbed the thoughts of entire civilizations," the strongest replied, its form becoming a Nethan collective that spanned dimensions. "Your harmony is a single note in a symphony I conduct across the cosmos. One by one, the representatives of the great galactic species tried to challenge the strongest and failed. It was not that they were weak. They were the best their civilizations had to offer. But the strongest was exactly what it claimed to be: the ultimate expression of power and evolution. Finally, only the humans remained. Jake Morrison looked at his team: Amy Foster, the marine biologist who had unlocked the secrets of ancient organisms; Pete Jackson, the technician who had first heard the call from across the galaxy; Dr. Lisa Carter, the xenobiologist who had connected the dots between Earth and the cosmos; Ben Martinez, the linguist who had spoken with gods. They were 5 ordinary humans facing a being that could reshape reality with its thoughts. "I guess it is our turn," Jake said quietly. They walked forward together, not as individuals but as a team. The strongest watched them approach, its energy form shifting between different configurations as if trying to understand what they represented. "And what do you offer, humans?" the strongest asked. "You cannot match the Krillian strength. You lack the Vexari intelligence. You do not possess Nethan harmony. You are the weakest, smallest, most limited species here. What could you possibly give to one who has transcended all limitations?" Jake looked up at the towering being of energy and light. He thought about humanity's long journey from the caves of Earth to the stars of the galaxy. He thought about all the times they had been told they were not strong enough, not smart enough, not good enough. "We cannot give you strength," Jake said. "You already have more power than you could ever use. We cannot give you knowledge. You already know everything there is to know. We cannot give you harmony. You exist in perfect balance with the cosmos." The strongest leaned closer, its form crackling with contained energy. "Then what use are you?" Amy stepped forward. "We can give you something you have lost." "Impossible. I lack nothing. I am complete," Lisa joined Amy. "You are alone." The strongest paused, its energy flickering for just a moment. "I need no one. I am sufficient unto myself." Pete and Ben moved to stand with their teammates. "That is not the same thing," Ben said gently. Jake stepped forward to complete the circle. "When did you last have a friend? When did you last share a joke or a story? When did you last feel wonder at something you had never seen before?" "I am beyond such simple emotions," the strongest declared, but its voice was less certain than before. "Are you happy?" Amy asked simply. The question hung in the air like a physical thing. The strongest's energy form wavered, cycling through different configurations as if searching for an answer. "Happy?" it repeated. "I am perfect. I am complete. I am lonely," Lisa finished softly. The being's energy dimmed. For the first time since its appearance, it seemed smaller somehow. I have not considered. Loneliness is a flaw, an imperfection. I eliminated it long ago." "You eliminated the ability to feel lonely," Pete said. "But that did not eliminate the loneliness itself. It just made it so you could not recognize it anymore." The strongest's form began to shift more, rapidly, as if it was struggling with something it had not felt in eons. "I do not understand. I have everything. I can do anything. I am empty," Ben said with compassion. "You gained the power to reshape reality, but you lost the desire to share that reality with anyone else." Jake stepped closer to the towering being. "We cannot offer you strength or knowledge or power, but we can offer you something else. We can offer you friendship. We can offer you the chance to be part of something bigger than yourself, not because you are incomplete, but because being connected to others makes existence more meaningful." "You would be friends with me?" the strongest asked, its voice now uncertain and almost childlike. "Even though I could destroy you without effort?" "That is what friendship is," Amy said. "Choosing to care about someone not because of what they can do for you, but because of who they are." The strongest was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, its massive energy form began to descend. It came down from its towering height until it was level with the humans, its power contained but not diminished. "I remember now," it said quietly. "Before I became this, before I transcended, I had companions, others who shared the journey with me. But as I grew stronger, I left them behind. I thought I no longer needed them." "You can have that again," Lisa offered. "Not the same companions, but new ones. People who care about you. Not because you are the strongest, but because you are you." The being's energy form began to take a more stable shape. something that was not quite human, but was no longer the terrifying abstraction of ultimate power. You would accept me, even knowing what I am capable of? We would try, Jake said honestly. Friendship is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Then something happened that had never occurred in all the eons of the strongest's existence. The being knelt, not in defeat or submission, but in gratitude. Its energy form touched the crystallized starlight of the platform, humbling itself before 5 small humans who had offered it the one thing its vast power could not create. I understand now, the strongest said. I understand why the architects chose you as their successors. Around them, the watching representatives of other species stared in amazement. The most powerful being in the galaxy was kneeling before humans, not because they had defeated it, but because they had shown it something it had forgotten, the value of connection, of community, of simple compassion. The architect appeared one final time, its energy form brighter and more complex than ever before. The trials are complete. The choice is made. Humanity will inherit our technology and become the new guardians of galactic civilization. General Thokmar stepped forward, his massive frame somehow less intimidating than it had been hours before. I do not understand. How did they win? They are not the strongest or the smartest. They won by remembering what we all forgot, the strongest said, still kneeling beside the humans. Power and knowledge mean nothing without compassion. Strength is hollow without kindness. Intelligence is useless without wisdom. Crystal Song of Stars, her crystalline body now pulsing with new, warmer colors, approached Jake Morrison. We thought ourselves superior because we were advanced, but advancement without heart leads only to emptiness. The architect's voice filled the dimension one last time. Let this be the beginning of a new age, an age where strength serves others, where knowledge builds bridges, where different species work together not in conquest, but in friendship. The humans will guide you not as rulers but as teachers, showing you the path back to what you once were and forward to what you could become. As the trials ended and the representatives prepared to return to the galaxy, Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. But it was not a burden. It was an opportunity. The humans who had once been laughed at by the Galactic Council were now being entrusted with the future of galactic civilization. Not because they were the strongest or smartest, but because they had never forgotten how to be human in an inhuman universe. And across the galaxy, the ancient organisms that had waited so patiently in Earth's oceans began to spread to other worlds, carrying with them the seeds of a new kind of civilization. One built not on power or perfection, but on the simple revolutionary idea that everyone, no matter how small or